Law Matters? Of course it does. Welcome once again. Hi, I'm Debra Morais, your host and moderator. As we tell you, this long-running program continues to provide legal information, relevant examples, and practical assistance to help you with law matters, because the law matters. We figure that a better understanding of the law makes you better prepared to handle yourself, your family, and your business legal issues. As we present various topics, you may decide to handle some issues yourself. If you decide to consult or enlist a professional counsel, you'll be better prepared, and as a result, so will they. Our goal, as always, is to save you time, money, and hopefully to achieve the best possible results. As always, we want to welcome again Attorney David Bazar, and together we would like to welcome once again Attorney Nick Murray, who both are representing the Bazar and Associates law firm in East Providence. So today, vaccine scams for a short time and unemployment scams. So the pandemic has provided scammers many more opportunities to defraud the public. And whether it's your computer, your tablet, your mobile device, your landline, even mail, all of those have been enlisted as sources of great tools of the trade for scammers. So with the ever-increasing use of computers, both the users and as well as the hackers, they've become increasingly more sophisticated, and so you need to be careful. We're going to tackle that today. So if you have been on the other side of having a vaccine, or in between, you may have been invited to skip the line, reserve your spot, join a clinical trial, countless things. Even get a free reward for having filled out a survey. Probably not a good idea. And on the other side, many of you perhaps are back to work, some of you perhaps are not back to work. Either way, maybe you or your employer received a letter or an email regarding unemployment benefits that the employee did not apply for. You might not even know about it until much later. So we're going to discuss that, what its impact is, and what you should do about it. Okay, gentlemen, let's begin. Let's do the easy thing first. So people are, as of this taping, are having their vaccines, but earlier on, there were problems about the distribution. Even now, not everyone has access to the vaccines. Where should you go? How should you rely on getting information about the status?
So there's a website that the Department of Health of most states have that tell you these are where you can get vaccines, this is the way to do it, and you should be proactively checking those websites that are created by the state and see what the availability is and where to get it. I know there were many state sites set up that allowed you to go in, and I think even at this point you could walk in, but some of those sites have been closing. So you just want to check online, Google it yourself, but go to a state-sponsored Department of Health site and look and see what's available.
There are often offers of new tests approved of, or you've been pre-approved for medicines and your insurance will cover it, and you get these by way of email and texts. Now, in fact, doctors and pharmacies do end up at times sending you emails and texts to confirm your appointment or whatever. Now, we've handled scams. You've been with us previously to discuss this. What do you do about those emails and texts when, in fact, you can reasonably assume that your pharmacy or your doctor may be contacting you, but there are scams going on? What do you do?
Reach back out to that doctor or that pharmacy, whatever the healthcare provider is, confirm that they in fact sent it, that it's a legitimate offer. I mean, the first step's confirming the email address that it was sent from, obviously, but they confirm that it's legitimate by whoever sent it.
And I'll tell you this, I know what doctors I see, and most of those emails from the doctor are text, they're really text messages. You have an appointment at such and such a time, press 10 to confirm or whatever. If I have an appointment at that time, I'm pretty confident it's from my doctor, and I'm going to press 10 to confirm. But if it's from a doctor that I don't know, or I know even if it says my doctor's name, I don't have an appointment, I'm not going to reply to that. I'll do what Nick said. I'll pick up the phone and call and say, why am I getting this text message or email? And from the pharmacy, again, I know what prescriptions I have and when they're due. I don't expect CVS or Walgreens or whoever else to email me or text me about anything other than my prescription. So if I get one, and even if I get that one, to be honest, I don't reply to it. I just go and pick up my prescription.
And if you think that it may be fraudulent, as we've said before, you never should provide any personal information. But apparently, it is the FCC, the FTC, the FDA, each of them have .gov sites that have a lengthy list of how to avoid what ends up being numerous sources of fraud, dating back to when we were wearing N5 masks, and a lot of them were fraudulent. And now, even now, it's post-COVID vaccine surveys that'll give you a free reward. So if there is an email attachment to what would look like a U.S. Health Department survey, what would you do? Would you suggest that they click here and take the survey? Or would you have another alternative that you think would be a wiser choice?
I'm always skeptical of any links to any surveys in any emails. We're ripe for the picking for scammers and hackers and cybercrime, so I'm always skeptical. Go on their website, the official .gov website, see if there are any surveys or offers that way.
I guess I'm a bad consumer because even when I bring my car for service or I have something else I know I've done and I get will you take the survey? I don't take the survey. Sorry.
So apparently this too has become rampant. Now more, as we said, more have taken the vaccine, and these surveys have attached to them, there's a free reward. Well, there isn't a free reward, and apart from that, apparently, as the FCC and FTC has been reporting, they're only asking that you give them your credit card to pay for the shipping. Is that not a glaring, we've talked about this for holiday scams, but apparently that is yet another way that they've been able to access even more information.
Yeah, again, don't follow any links. I agree with David. Don't take any surveys, especially anything that's asking for any personally identifying information or credit card information, bank information. If it's truly a free offer, particularly from your government, they don't need your bank information or your credit card.
Some states have created incentives for people to get vaccinated, and there are million-dollar lottery potential, or if you're going into college, $300,000 tuition scholarships. They are legitimate, but you don't have to go online or give anyone a credit card or do anything of that nature to qualify. You go to the place where you get vaccinated, and they have the information, and you do it that way. And when you get vaccinated, the government knows that you've been vaccinated.
They have their own records. So an interesting story came up. While experts say that it's illegal to buy vaccines or a vaccination card privately, there apparently are legal consequences for doing so. If you did do this, number one, it's terrible if you were a victim of fraud, but now there are some legal consequences. How will that be? How does that work out? How can they determine that you've bought? Who's determining it? Who's pressing charges?
Well, let me ask you this question. Are you saying you can buy vaccinations?
Well, they say, of course, you cannot. That's
right.
Question number one. But if someone doesn't know that that is illegal and you can't buy those vaccinations, and they manage to click, or they buy, or they sent a credit card to pay for what will never arrive, or even if it does, it's, I don't know, snake oil. But apparently, there are legal consequences for you having been victimized or for you having done this. How does that, is that being traced? How would you imagine that that works?
Well, I'm not familiar with how you as a victim are going to be penalized or what that is, but I would tell people that as far as I know, and I've been vaccinated, it was free. I just had to register at that point in time and show up and get vaccinated. So why would you go online, pay for something that you don't even know what it is you're getting, and become a double victim apparently, so that you're also victimized by this website and potentially facing some criminal charges? Is that what you're saying?
That's what they're saying. There's some legal consequences to you, never mind to the perpetrator.
Right.
which I can't imagine how they're going to track that down, but that's yet another matter. As you said at the outset, better that you go to the health department site, or if it were a pharmacy site, are you still giving vaccinations and when and where and how? But people are apparently now receiving more emails, more texts, even phone calls about doing this. And it seems that we need to make our viewers aware of
Right.
the fact that that can happen. So we've talked about scams in the past, and yes, you were here. Obviously, scammers aren't reinventing the wheel. They're still using phone calls and emails and texts. Now, when it comes to the phone calls, apparently they're very sophisticated now. My exchange happens to be 934, so if I see 934, maybe I'm thinking it's a neighbor who's calling or whatever. What do? You can't always determine that there's a robocall or a strange. What do you suggest that someone do when they're receiving these calls? They did answer it rather than just let it go to voicemail. What do you suggest someone does when they're getting these robocalls now with this?
I suggest you ask that person to send you a letter, right? Some sort of confirmation in writing. It'll have if it's official, it will have a telephone number in the correspondence, and you can reach back out to them.
So, yeah, if there's a person on the other end of that call, so sometimes these things come through and it takes a little bit of time for the person actually to click on and talk, I usually will say thank you very much and hang up. If it's a robocall, I'll hang up. And, you know, they say sometimes if you want to stay on and you press 2 to opt out, you can do that. I'm not sure that pressing 2 ever opts you out. I don't know what it does. So my advice, what I do is I hang up.
And you say never give them any kind of information
Nothing.
at all, ever.
Nothing.
Can I clarify, when I said send me a letter, they don't need your address. If it's somebody legitimate, they have it. Don't give any information to anyone ever over the phone.
Yes, and if they're calling to say, well, we have an update on this vaccine, Moderna, Pfizer, whatever it is, we have information regarding your health report or whatever, many people would not question that, although we say you should question, just don't. But people do, and of course when they do, if they've hit that button, if they've disclosed some numbers, what do they do? What should they do next? Should they call the state police thinking that they might have done something wrong because they then realize it, or perhaps a son, daughter, or mother, father says, that's really not legit? What should you do?
Depends on the type of information that you think you may have conveyed.
Say you gave your credit card number.
Give your credit card number, you should contact state police and also contact the credit card companies.
Right. Yeah, and just to go back to something Nick said, one of the scams, at least I thought it was a scam, is people calling to make a donation to some charity. And I do the same thing. They'll say, well, what can I put you down for? Can I put you down for $100? Can I put you, what can I put you down for? And I would say the same thing that Nick said. Send me the information in the mail, I'll look at it, and then I'll consider it.
And yet there's one more to talk about before we transition to the unemployment scams. Now that more people have either had COVID and or had the vaccines for it, calls are being made to offer antibody tests and at times pre-approved medications, because now since you've had your vaccine, you're likely to have this pain or that. You've already been pre-approved. I'm calling from, say, a medical insurance company or an insurance company. It sounds like it's paid for. Why wouldn't I want that? What should you do then other than hang up? Because you're probably intrigued. An antibodies test? Did I have it? Am I secure? How should people handle that? How would you advise that people handle those kinds of calls? Because they can be very engaging.
I would handle it the same way and say, please send that to me in writing. I want to look everything over and make sure I understand it exactly, what it is you're offering and what I have to do. And again, don't give any information. They have it. They contacted you.
And I would say, in addition to that, if you had the vaccine, what do you need the antibody test for? They've already studied what the vaccine does for you, so leave it at that.
And I guess that's another reason for mentioning, because not everybody apparently knows that, even though they should, which again, I guess brings us back to the point that we first made. There are the CDC sites the FTC, there are so many scam-related issues that they've covered them all at length. So these are things that could easily make viewers aware before they click, divulge a piece of information that they shouldn't. So many people now are still not working. Others have gone back to work and now have their paycheck. And apparently you too could be getting a letter, or if you're an employer, you could be getting a letter that says so-and-so is about to collect, or you, if you're the employee, you should file now, you know, whatever that website was, the online dlt.gov or whatever. What should you do when you know that you didn't apply for unemployment benefits? Sounds like it could be great, another $300 or whatever else. You don't necessarily know what it's about. What should you do?
Several things. I think you should contact the state police. You should contact your state unemployment agency. Socialsecurity.gov, right, another government website, which you can view your whole earnings statement. They can go over it with you. The IRS.gov also has an identity theft branch off on their website, so that you can, particularly if there's tax consequences for unemployment claims, that's something that you want to approach with the IRS.
No, you don't. Oh, yes, you do, I guess. Yes, you do. So understanding that so many of the state and government organizations have been working half-staff, closed staff, or just entirely online, people have found that it's almost impossible to be able to call and say, hello, Mr. IRS, or find any human being to talk to. Do you trust these online sites if you're going to the IRS.gov? I know that there are /fraud or COVID scam -fraud sites. Is that what you should do?
I would say that if any websites can be trusted these days, the .gov websites can.
And so even the state police now in Rhode Island, for example, have had so many calls that they have a 7-minute recorded list of instructions, including where to go on their website, which means now that you might not have to go to the DLT, Department of Labor and Training, and yet DLT has its own site. So does it really matter which one you do first? I assume you should do both, as you were saying earlier. Does it matter which one's first, even though the state police says if you've clicked here, done this, and filed this, you need not go to DLT? It seems like your employer would not be able to know about the rest of the details unless you complete that.
Well, the employer gets something too.
Should, yes.
And so we've received several for people who are still working, and so what we do is we say it's a fraud, they're still working, and and then there's also information in the DLT about what to do with fraud and who to report it to. So they both are telling you to report it to each other a little bit, but yes. And on top of that, so I've received them, and one of them was for Rhode Island unemployment, and I looked at it, and it wasn't even my social security number, because they get the last 4 digits on it, my address, but not my social security number. So I wasn't as concerned about that one, but I still reported it. And one from Massachusetts, which I never worked in, and both of them said I wasn't eligible for unemployment from the Department of Labor and Training for my application because, well, the one with the wrong social security number wasn't mine, so I didn't work enough, I guess, under that social security number. And the one in Massachusetts said I wasn't eligible because I didn't work well because I don't work in Massachusetts, but I still reported both of them.
Sounds right. So Rhode Island has the DLT, Massachusetts has DUA, the Department of Unemployment Assistance, but both states are, as of this taping, are reporting that they've had something like 16,000 calls a day. They've had to put on 670 new people just to manage or adjudicate the unemployment claims, the frauds. I think that apparently this is not going away because they are well set up for it. And back to the issue about the state police and the DLT, at least from the state police's perspective, they are saying that they are going to help usher that back through to DLT, but better for you to connect the two anyway. So what happens if you didn't get the letter and you're an employee, but it could be 11 months, as in 2022 when you're ready to do your 2021 taxes. And say Massachusetts, David, gives you a 1099-G for how much unemployment you've received, but you've not received it. You may not know that this has happened to you for 11 or 12 months. Consequences of this, what are your suggestions about that? What do you do? If you don't know, you have to wait till you get that IRS document that you have to file?
Sure. First of all, yeah, notify your employer. Also, if you don't know, let's brush up on some of that. Annualcreditreport.com is a pretty credible website that you can get your credit reports, free once a year, I believe still. Everybody should be doing that just to make sure that they're not victims of fraud. But yeah, still contact the IRS through the irs.gov, contact the DLT or the DUA, contact your state police. You still have to take the same steps.
And are you penalized in any way for your not having even known about this for up to a year? How is that going to wreak havoc on your, well, I guess it wouldn't wreak havoc on your credit unless those same people who are hacking and sending these letters to tap your unemployment, unless they sold it and it ended up getting into your credit report or your, I don't know, your bank account or your debit card or however else they infiltrate.
So that's where the annual credit report would be a good idea, because that will tell you where your credit is being used. As far as the money you made that you never got, if you didn't know about it, you didn't know about it. Your accountant, if you have an accountant, would have to deal with it, or you need to deal with the IRS when the time comes. And it's going to come in the year following. So you might not know about it till April of the following year when you have to file taxes, or in January when you get the 1099s.
Back to that annual credit report. Yes, it's free once a year, and there are 3 reporting bureaus. Considering what's going on this time, does it make sense that you take one credit report every 3 or 4 months so that you can at least, obviously they won't have the exact same report, or they list it differently, but principally the same information. Is it wiser now to stagger them just so that you can keep an eye on what might be a new credit card opening that you just didn't happen to have, but somebody else did? Is that a better way to deal with it?
I think
makes
that is
sense.
wise, yeah. If you're just doing it to monitor your credit, I think that's the way to do it.
David and I previously had talked about whether or not you need to freeze your credit report, freeze your credit.
Yep.
Under these circumstances, and apparently when we had this discussion, if I recall correctly, that's not, you don't really want to do that, but under these circumstances, might that change whether or not you would do that?
I wouldn't do it unless you saw evidence of something that raised a red flag. And we talked about someone applying for a loan in your name, and then you get the letter from the bank saying, we don't have enough information. Now you know that something's going on. That's a time to contact the credit bureaus for sure and take a look and see if it's a reason that you need to freeze your credit for whatever reason. It's not a step I like to take, but if that's the only thing I can do to give myself some protection, then I'm going to do that.
And I think you brought up another interesting point too. If you happen to take out a loan, that might be one of the other ways that it triggers that you've had the identity theft, the unemployment fraud, or whatever. Also, if you did in these next upcoming months become laid off and you apply for unemployment, that would be another potential trigger where you'd find out that you've already collected X dollars that, of course, you've not collected.
Right.
And there are some other ways to report and get engaged with your credit before freezing your credit. There's you mentioned the FTC. There's a identitytheft.gov is overseen by the FTC, which is the Consumer Protection Agency for the nation. That's one place to start and report. The FBI also partnered with a white-collar crimes division. It's ic3.gov. It's a Internet Criminal Complaint Center. It's just cyber crimes, and they actually disperse the complaints to law enforcement agencies that have jurisdiction. So there are a lot of ways to report and deal with before you freeze credit.
Would you agree with that? Is that
I don't know that much about it, so if he said that,
If that makes sense.
he's the master researcher.
So considering this is so rampant and more people are theoretically able to go back to work, would you hazard a guess as to whether or not we're going to be able to be a little less vigilant? No, I don't want to say less vigilant, but perhaps have fewer,
less of a need.
maybe have less of a need. Does that make sense? Or are they just going to be finding new ways to tap into that unemployment anyway?
I think they'll always find new ways to tap into things that we consider secure for a brief period of time.
And I think there was one other point that came up when we were dealing with a little investigation here. There are passwords that you need to have, and we're supposed to protect them. That's always wise. But when it comes to the unemployment, is that one that at the unemployment site itself is safe, or should people now be concerned with what they have as their password to get into their unemployment sites? Is that something that means they should go back and change all of those right now just in case, in a way to avoid perhaps being hacked? Would that make a difference?
I don't think it would make a difference in getting hacked. But
Yeah. I mean, if you changed it, maybe if it was hacked already, you'd have some protection, but it's, they always tell you to change your passwords frequently. So if that's a password you have and you can change it frequently, keep it up.
It's interesting because I don't think I've read where the source of the hack came in, whether a DLT site has been hacked versus someone just came in and managed to get some portion of your information, my information, and then found a way in. But it seems like that would have been blocked if we had safe passwords. But obviously there are many ways that they've been able to squirrel around and manage to infect our sites and tap into our unemployment. At the same time the unemployment's happening with fraud, apparently people are now getting more phone calls about, I'm sorry, it seems that your email, that your check got rerouted to the wrong place. Please correct this information. Should we? Should you just shut it off right there? What should someone do with that?
you can want those notices coming from the DLT or the DUA, or?
Would you, and you don't know, hi, I'm from the DLT.
Yeah, don't respond.
No.
Don't give them information, don't do it. If you don't get your check, call them and say, hey, I didn't get my check.
So we've always said, beware of those inbound calls, better that you make the outbound calls.
Right.
We hope that these tips and tricks have been helpful to you. We hope to see fewer of these vaccine scams. Stay tuned to The Law Matters. As we say, it matters to you. Thank you.